Charles Robinson does a great job covering the NFL for Yahoo Sports, has a good take on this, and so much going down with the NFL. Kind enough to join us for a couple moments. How you been, Charles?
I'm good. I am good. It's been a fast and furious 24 hours.
I know, and I appreciate a couple moments with you. All right, let's get right into the Eagles move. You had an interesting piece that you wrote on why this move doesn't seem as crazy as it sounds, and I'll give you my perspective on it first, and then obviously I want to get your insight and you to chime in. I don't have I guess the issue is I think you're mortgaging a lot, and I understand franchise quarterbacks are far and few. I am not enamored with any of the quarterbacks this year. I thought the Eagles had more pressing needs, and I think they could have been fulfilled at 8. I just think you're also sending a signal to Sam Bradford where, we don't really have that much confidence in you. And right. I guess that's kind of where when Howie Roseman says, well, these guys were projected at 1 or 2. No. Because if Mariota and Winston come out this year, not last year, then guess what? They're 1 and 2. So let me get your overall view, your take on this draft and how it does make sense for the Eagles.
Well, I mean, you got to approach this from the standpoint of philosophy first. And the philosophy between Doug Peterson, owner Jeffrey Lurie, and general manager Howie Roseman is that the quarterback position has really not, if you want to look historically, all the way back to when Donovan McNabb became a descending player, it has not been resolved adequately. They've failed over and over and over again. That's the way that they look at the quarterback spot in the long view of history. And there are a litany of reasons for why those failures occurred, but the bottom line is they were failures. And I think that when they sat down and they looked at what Sam Bradford was, and Jeff Lurie played I think a significant role, a central role in Bradford's contract. He essentially said, look, we've already given up money, and we've given up a pick. We've given up money to this guy as it is. What's the hurt in keeping him a little bit longer, at least a year, and taking a look at, what we've got? So at that time, when that deal is signed, we've got what we believe is at the very least a mid-level starter. Let's get another, look at him for a year. And then when Peterson came aboard with Chase Daniel, it was, I believe this guy can be an NFL starter. I believe he's got the skills to, at the very least, be a starter in the league. Maybe not a mid-level starter, whatever. But now we have 2 players who are capable of starting at the quarterback position. So those are 2 shots you're taking at that spot. Well, when the Sam Bradford deal was done, the reason why it was the money was arranged the way that it was, which is essentially we can get out of this for $5.5 million in the second year, it was just in case. It was just in case. If we get an opportunity, if there's a quarterback that we really want and we got to move up for him in the draft, we have that flexibility. Well, I don't think they knew they'd be moving from 13 to 8, and then have the opportunity to move from 8 to 2. And when that presented itself, you have guys who evaluated those players, believe they're franchise guys. Whether you and I believe that or not doesn't matter.
Sure.
They believe.
Agree.
And once they believe that, they sat there and said, we set ourselves up for this opportunity. We set ourselves up for this chance. Is it awkward? Yes. Are we taking pieces off the table that could have aided Sam Bradford? Yes. Are we planting the seed in Sam Bradford's mind that we don't necessarily believe in you as, being the guy who rises to the top? Yes. But that does not mean that we pass on these guys, because we never know when that opportunity will come around again. And we already know, at the very least, we know a little bit about what we've got in Sam Bradford. So I think it was just loading the chamber with as many potential franchise guys as possible or chances at that as possible, and kind of seeing how this plays out. And the one thing that I haven't talked about, and I think a lot of people are missing here, Bradford could still potentially affect his position. If he goes out next year.
Oh, absolutely. Has a monster year.
Yeah, that changes. He can change that equation still. And so, I just think in their minds it was all those failures after Donovan and never really truly feeling like they had wrapped their hands around a guy who could lead them for a decade, for a 10-year guy, and that was why they've just thrown everything they could at that position.
Listen, those are fair points, and you know how social media works and Twitter, things get misconstrued. And I guess during my opening monologue, it's not. Look, the Eagles don't have a time machine. They didn't know, as you alluded to, the deal would go down or present itself. I guess my thinking is, was this more that they were so enamored with one of those two quarterbacks? They saw two teams, at least one team that definitely had a need for a quarterback in the Rams. Maybe not so much with the Browns, despite the fact that they signed RG3, and they wanted to jump on it. You know, there's the argument. My thing is, if they didn't really believe that the Browns would come swooping in and get a quarterback in number 2, then they probably could have grabbed him in 8. That's, I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? That's kind of where I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is you don't know. There's a lot of space there, you know, in terms of those picks, and you don't know. The Browns were shopping that pick hard, and they're shopping it all over the place. Yeah. And I know it sounds crazy, but there's still a chance, that the Browns move back again from 8, and I think that the New York Jets are a possibility, and I think that, you know, knowing how things have gone between the Jets and Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yep.
Knowing that they've kicked tires on so many guys and seem to get a little more aggressive about it recently, you know, that money is just so far apart. I mean, if they want, what I was told, they want Ryan Fitzpatrick back at, you know, $8 million per $12 million in the first year deal, which is a 1-year deal,
which is half of what he wants.
Right? Yeah, bingo. That's it right there, half of what he wants. So the Jets are sitting there going, this is not resolved. So are we gonna roll with Geno? Are we gonna roll with really an untested quarterback that we drafted last year? And if we believe in any of these guys, could we move? And I think the Browns, depending on the package that's offered, I think they were willing to move back, and I still think they're willing to move back from 8 potentially. So you just don't know what teams are still out there that are willing to leapfrog you. And you know, Again, I think it just goes back to, we've got this chance. We can do it. I personally believe there's some regret there that there wasn't sort of this nature last season just to go, you know what, if we got to mortgage everything
to get Mariota.
Marcus Mariota. Yeah. Right.
Which, right. And how about this, Charles? Can you imagine this? They get Mariota, Kelly gets his guy, the season doesn't implode, and maybe Chip Kelly's still the head coach.
Maybe, I will say this, maybe the season doesn't implode, because what you would have, and this is legit, I mean, what you would have had to have given up for Marcus Mariota, knowing what I know from the Titans, to move from that spot to get, you know, to 2 last year, would have had to have been astronomical. I mean, we're talking players, we're talking everything the Rams just gave up to move from 15 to 1. It's that plus stripping out maybe 4 or 5 players.
Wow.
I mean, they would have had to give up a ton. And honestly, knowing how the Titans feel about Mariota now, knowing some of the things that we saw, I kind of get that.
Sure.
I get why the Titans wanted that bounty.
Last thought on the Eagles, and again, a couple minutes with Charles Robinson, does a great job covering the NFL for Yahoo Sports. Rich Quinones here. We'll take it up to 2 o'clock. From what, and I don't know if you know this, so I'm not trying to put you on the spot, in any research of those you've spoken to or what you know, were the Eagles really to a man looking to make this move several weeks ago, or is this something that just came out of nowhere, it started to snowball effect, and all of a sudden, hey, we have an opportunity? And also, a second part of that question, do you think when it's all said and done, they do get a quarterback in number 2? Can they throw a monkey wrench in this and say, get a tackle at 2?
I can tell you that when I was in Boca Raton for the owners' meetings in March, I had people telling me then, hey, the Eagles are serious about vetting quarterbacks, like top end of the draft quarterbacks. Now, up until that point, I had known that they wanted to draft a quarterback regardless, that they were going to take a quarterback. But, you know, from what my understanding was at that time, it's probably going to be a third round. You know, it's going to be a third round guy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I was told in Boca Raton was Jeff Lurie's involved in this. He wants them to at least be very aggressive in their vetting process to see if there is someone there. And I think a lot of this, remember, I think all these possibilities were really unlocked by what happened with Miami.
Yep.
I think that if that doesn't happen, maybe this process is different. But I think all of a sudden that lit the fuse that, hey, if we got to move, we can do it. So let's at least take the time to do it. And I believe Jeff Lurie played a big part in this. This idea that when he looks back over the last couple of decades, it means something to be settled on a guy and to have that guy and that 10 years of just not having that question looming over literally everything in your franchise. And I think also he looks out at the Raiders. I think you look at Jacksonville, you look at some of these other
young
teams
quarterbacks,
with young quarterbacks. Yeah, and things turn around pretty quickly for those franchises.
Let's move on quickly to the Panthers, and I guess it's a situation talking about the cap flexibility. You talked about philosophies of teams. It just looks like the Panthers were not enamored to throw that type of money into the secondary. They want to put it more in pass rushers and linebackers, but the fact that they rescind the franchise tag on Norman, who's a very talented player, is there more to it? Is this a move where, okay, he wants a long-term deal, he wants certain money, but maybe we're just not – maybe there's personality conflicts there where, I don't want to give this kid this type of money. He's going to be a headache down the road.
Yes, I think that was a component of this. I think there's a couple of things here. Number one, people don't realize it, but Josh Norman honestly was kind of in the doghouse, when this season started for the Carolina Panthers. I don't think they expected him to have this season that he had. They did try to get a deal done going into this season. I think they were always reticent to give him a ton of money because, again, it's a cover three system. I mean, there's zone corners, and historically in the NFL, you just don't pay those guys. And he was running a 4.6. He's not a turn and run corner who's going to be a man-to-man guy. And even amongst the zone corners, he's simply put, no NFL team has ever suggested to me, and I talked to a lot of them yesterday afternoon, has suggested to me that he's on Richard Sherman's level.
Wow.
And he wanted in excess of Richard Sherman money. And that is a problem. And the Panthers have seen him. They know who he is. I think part of it was personalities. I think Dave Gettleman, they didn't click on a personal level. And I think once they put that tag on him and he didn't sign it, and he clearly was unhappy, and then other deals started to roll out, and he started to talk about the franchise tag publicly, they knew there was going to be a rain cloud over his head, even if he did sign it and report, and they just didn't want to go through that. They knew they were going to – it comes down to you don't want a guy in your locker room who's unhappy, particularly when you're never going to pay him that money anyway. Right. And I think in an ideal world, they would have been able to figure out a way to I think they would have liked to have gotten a trade done. I think, that was, if that could have been somehow engineered, I think they would have been okay with that. But, it comes down to he wants to be paid like a cornerback who follows guys everywhere, all around the field, has 4.4 speed, all that stuff, can, jam and do everything. And they don't see him like that. And they're never going to pay a corner like that. And, Dave Gettleman is, now we're seeing, and I think people are seeing it more nationally, he's not playing around. When you get to that point where he's had it, he's had it.
And look, there's going to be suitors, Jacksonville, the Raiders. I mean, there's, if the kid wants to go West Coast, if that's the feel, he's got that East Coast but West Coast personality. He likes to talk. He's a self-promoter. He's going to get signed. He'll have his pick of the litter. Got about 2 minutes before I let you get out of here. How about Muhammad Wilkerson and the Jets? And I also want to get your thoughts on the Jets. They brought in Hoyer. We're talking about Fitzpatrick and that money, so kind of twofold. What's going to happen with the Jets and Wilkerson, and who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Jets when the season starts?
Well, again, the Jets and Wilkerson, the hang up there is, it's twofold. I mean, we're the Bears, a team that would be interested in him, on any given day. But I mean, they don't want to give up the draft asset that you would have to give up, which is a minimum first round pick, then a ton of money on top of it. So do I think he could still get moved on draft day? Yes, I do think he could. I think there's to me right now, a higher percentage chance he plays next season under that tag. As far as the quarterback, situation goes, if I think they're going to take a very, very aggressive stance and try and address it in the draft. But if it doesn't fall their way, I still think there's, that Fitzpatrick. It doesn't make sense to me that Fitzpatrick's going to end up somewhere else, because the best situation by far for him is to remain in
They want him back. That's the amazing thing. The guy had a franchise year. Look, I know he had the turnovers late to close out the season, but he had franchise numbers with the Jets. Yeah. And this never happens if Geno Smith doesn't break his jaw. So the guy can extend his NFL career in a system that fits him, where players want him back. I never fault a player for wanting money, but I'm sorry. He is not a $16 to $20 million quarterback. That's my opinion. Look, that coordinator's not anywhere else in the NFL. I know.
And he has worked well with Ryan Fitzpatrick. So there's danger, in leaving. But at his age and kind of what's going on now, look, the Jets basically said, look, you're going to get $12 million. You're getting $12 million.
Right.
That year one, you're getting $12 million. So to them, they're like, we're going to pay you, and you've already made, $40 million in your career. So, you're going to get a good, decent pop. And guess what? If you do well,
you're going to get
more.
That's right.
You're going to get more.
Yeah. It's a big picture, Charles. It's always the big picture.
Always.
Sometimes we don't see that. Hey, always a pleasure, my friend. Great stuff. I appreciate the insight.
It's always my pleasure, Rich.
All right, you got it. Charles Robinson.